So, Apple just did something nobody saw coming. Out of the blue, they've launched a totally new MacBook lineup called the MacBook Neo. And it's a machine that's all about one thing. It's incredible price. But how did they pull that off? Today, we're going to break down what this new MacBook is really offering, and maybe more importantly, what it's missing.
Okay, let's just start with the number that has everyone talking. Here in Korea, it's 990,000 won. I mean, for a brand new MacBook, that price is it's almost hard to believe. And if you're a student, it gets even crazier, dropping down to 850,000 won. We've just never seen a price like this for a MacBook before, ever. And to put that in perspective for everyone, the starting price globally is just $599. That's the same price as a Mac Mini. It's the same price as the newest iPhone 17. So that barrier to owning a Mac laptop, it hasn't just been lowered, it's been completely demolished. This is, without a doubt, the most accessible Mac laptop Apple has ever released.
So, what exactly are you getting for that price? Well, let's start with how it looks and feels. Because if there's one thing Apple always gets right, it's making their stuff feel premium, even when it's their budget device. And you know what? The Neo is no different.
The first thing that jumps out at you are the colors. They're fun, they're vibrant, and they're definitely aimed at a younger crowd. You've got citrus, which is this bright yellow-green. Then there's blush, a soft pink that kind of reminds me of the old rose gold iPhones. Indigo is this deep, almost retro blue. And of course, there's a classic silver. What's really cool, though, is that the keyboards are tinted to match, but in a lighter shade. It gives it this really nice two-tone look when you open it up. The body itself is still that solid, single block of aluminum we're used to, so it feels really sturdy. But the shape, it's a little different from the super sharp edges of the MacBook Air. It's rounder, a bit puffier. One person described it as dongle, which is a great way of saying it has this softer, more approachable feel. It almost looks like a throwback to the MacBooks from years ago. Now, let's talk size and weight. The Neo has a smaller 12.9-inch screen, and its overall footprint is smaller than the 13.6-inch Air. So you'd think it would be lighter, right? Well, here's the surprise. It's not. It weighs exactly the same 2.7 pounds. And this is really our first big clue that making this thing as light as possible wasn't the goal. Hitting that price point was everything. Okay, now let's get into the internals, because this is where we see the biggest change from every other MacBook out there. The Neo doesn't run on an M-series chip. Nope, it's actually got the heart of an iPhone. It's running on the A18 Pro, which is the exact same chip you'd find in the iPhone 16 Pro. But, and this is a big but, it's what's called a binned version. All that means is that one of the 6 graphics cores didn't quite make the cut, so they disabled it, leaving it with 5. It's a really common way to use up perfectly good chips that aren't flawless, and it's a huge part of how they got the costs down.
So, what does that actually mean for performance? Well, compared to the original M1 chip, a single core is actually faster, which is great for things like opening apps and browsing the web. Multi-core jobs, it's about the same. But because of that disabled core, its graphics are a little bit slower than the M1. And of course, it's not even in the same league as the newer M3 or M5 chips. The bottom line is pretty simple. For writing documents, checking email, and watching videos, it's totally fine. But you probably don't want to be editing your next feature film on this thing.
We've seen a couple of hints, but now we're getting to the real story. How in the world did Apple get this thing down to 990,000 won? Well, it all came down to a long list of careful and, let's be honest, pretty surprising compromises. The first big cut, and this is the one that really made people's jaws drop, is the keyboard. There's no backlight. I mean, a backlit keyboard has been standard on every single MacBook for what, more than a decade? Getting rid of it is a huge signal that absolutely nothing was safe from the chopping block. Next up, the trackpad. You know how on modern MacBooks, the trackpad doesn't actually click? It just uses these little vibrations or haptics to feel like it does? Well, the Neo throws that all out and goes back to an old-school, physical, diving board-style clicking trackpad. If you're used to a modern Mac, you are going to feel the difference immediately. For a lot of people, this was actually the most shocking compromise of them all. Now let's talk about the ports, because this is a perfect example of the cost-cutting. You get 2 USB-C ports, but they are not the same. One is a decent USB 3 port, but the other one is a USB 2.0 port. That's a standard that's about 20 times slower. There's no super fast Thunderbolt for hooking up fancy monitors or drives, and there's no MagSafe for charging either.
The display took a hit too. Now, the brightness is 500 nits, which is the same as the MacBook Air, and that's great, but it doesn't have that P3 wide color gamut. In plain English, that means it just can't show as many rich, vibrant colors. For browsing the web, it's fine, but if you're a photographer or designer, you'll notice the difference. It also doesn't have True Tone, that feature that automatically adjusts the screen's warmth to match the light around you.
And the list keeps going. The base model, no Touch ID. Just a plain old power button. The RAM is locked in at 8 gigs, you can't upgrade it. You only get 2 simple speakers instead of the much better 4-speaker system in the Air. The battery is smaller, so you're looking at about 2 to 4 hours less battery life in the real world, and even the charger they give you in the box is a slower 20-watt brick. You see, each cut by itself might not seem like a huge deal, but when you put them all together, they really, really add up.
Okay, so after running through a list of compromises that long, you have to be asking yourself, with all of that stuff taken out, who is this laptop actually for? Well, it turns out Apple had a very, very specific person in mind. So let's put it all together. Is the MacBook Neo the affordable entry-level laptop we've all been waiting for, or is it a bunch of compromises that you should probably just skip? The truth is, the answer completely depends on who you are and what you need. Let's be crystal clear. This is not a laptop for power users. It's not for video editors or designers. This machine was built from the ground up for students who need to write papers, for people who pretty much live in a web browser and their email app, and for anyone who's always wanted a Mac but couldn't stomach the price. It's designed to be the perfect first MacBook. You know, Marques Brownlee really hit the nail on the head with this quote. For years and years, cheap Chromebooks have owned the education market, not because they're amazing, but because they're cheap. The MacBook Neo is Apple's direct shot at that market. It's a simple, reliable, well-built machine that does the basics really well, all inside Apple's ecosystem. It really is a Safari book. And this is where the value proposition gets really interesting. For a long time, the budget option for students who wanted an Apple device was to buy an iPad and then shell out for an expensive keyboard case. But when you add up those costs, you're often paying as much or even more than this new MacBook Neo. Now, for the same money, students can get a real laptop with a real keyboard and a full desktop operating system. It's a game changer. So, at the end of the day, the MacBook Neo is a story all about trade-offs. Apple took away a whole bunch of features that we've all just started to take for granted. A lit-up keyboard, a high-tech trackpad, fast ports, and they did it all to hit that unbelievable price. So the question it really leaves us with is a personal one for you to think about. Are those compromises worth it? What are you willing to give up to get a MacBook for that price?